What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the BlockHash podcast. Today, we have on another exciting guest, Chris, the CEO and co-founder of Sonic SVM, the first gaming-focused Solana virtual machine L2 network. Chris, welcome to the show, man. Hope you're having a great day. How you doing?
I'm doing great, sir. Just getting back from Devcon and enjoying the weather here a little bit as well. Great to be here, and thanks for having me.
Pleasure's all mine. How was Devcon? I know a lot of people were going to that.
Yeah, I mean, aside from the traffic, which is always like the most exciting, but also risky part about Thailand, but overall a great experience. I think there's a lot more presence, within our ecosystem, which is obviously Solana, but also just a lot of excitement around kind of new developments when it comes to applications, and also the markets, been doing very very good. So overall, great attendance.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we dive into all of that, I think people would love to know a little bit more about yourself. If you could share a little bit about your personal journey into the Web3 industry and kind of what set you on the path to Sonic SVM.
Yeah, for sure. So we started building, Mirror World, which is the mother company of Sonic, 3 years back at this point. I was brought into the ecosystem, during college when I was studying at New York University, did finance and entertainment degree. So kind of in the middle of this industry, I would say like that's entertainment as well as finance, and was brought into this game, I guess, by a couple of our friends launching their projects during the college days. And some of them were also mining within their dorms when I was a freshman, and just kind of happened to bump into them and learned a lot about how their operations worked. Electricity was free back at NYU, and that kind of just brought me to dive into the rabbit hole. But it wasn't until 2021 when the NFT craze kind of happened. I actually got into the space, having worked at multiple consumer entertainment and investment firms. It was just very natural to me that this would be a new wave of culture, kind of financialization happening at the same time. And I think that's what's interesting about this cycle as well. Meme coins and making a comeback, or I guess last cycle kind of gave us a little bit of taste for that, but we've seen that really solidify into this industry right now. So Sonic SVM, we started building it really as a product in February this year. So for the last 6 months, we've been grinding at Sonic SVM, which is the first SVM to launch and settle on top of Solana. But at the same time, it's also one of the leading gaming ecosystems on top of Solana. So the backgrounds of our team before I started this company was in ByteDance, which is TikTok's mother company, Tencent, Electronic Arts. That's kind of where the crew came from. And that background led us to the realization that Web3 or crypto really changes, one, the fundraising aspect of the entire entertainment industry, and in this aspect we started with gaming, and then second, the trading of all of the digital assets that is on chain. So we started on Solana early 2022, and we built asset minting contracts, we built embedded marketplaces, MPC wallets, all kinds of stack that allowed us to really bring liquidity into the ecosystem even at the barest of times. But we stuck with the ecosystem and really grew with the foundation. So this year, when we saw that the meme coins are congesting the network to a certain degree, and some of the games having fully on-chain transactions was actually driving 10 to 15% of the entire mainnet's transactions. So for example, if you look at Star Atlas, at any moment in time for Star Atlas, it actually drives around 5% to 10% of Solana's transaction numbers, which is significant if you think about the total wallet addresses that a game like Star Atlas might have. A couple thousand people driving 10% of the entire mainnet's transaction. And last year in November, when the bull market was just kind of uprising, that was even more ridiculous at 20%. So we saw that there is a need to actually abstract away some of those hotspots on top of mainnet, and really create a extension to the network for these specific use cases. Having worked in gaming for the last 3 years, especially Web3 gaming, we realized there's an opportunity for scaling, there's an opportunity for distribution, and there's also an opportunity for specific publishing regarding content. So that's why we created Sonic SVM, which is the gaming ecosystem or network extension on top of Solana.
Okay. And would you say that's the core mission for Sonic SVM as well, to bring these transactions on chain and be able to scale them?
Yeah, so I think scalability is a part of the solution. The core mission is to push gaming to the speed of light, as close to speed of light as possible. And at our company, the core is really to bring more people on chain through entertainment or digital assets or gaming, so to speak. And we think that putting everything on chain is a part of the solution, but not really the most key or crucial aspect. Although that is a problem to be solved as well. So one thing that we really focus on, I talked about distribution briefly just now during the introduction, is actually creating a funnel into Web3 or into Solana, and we create funnels everywhere, right? So we have a operations called Sonic X, which is currently one of the largest TikTok applications for Web3. So we were able to create a mini app that is similar to the Ton experience, but hosted directly within TikTok. That way, if you think about if you're a new user, you see a video on top of TikTok's feed, and you directly click in, and you can start earning or completing quests for all kinds of assets. And that host itself is produced by Sonic, and all of the transactions are sitting on the testnet, and all of the clicks and gaming mechanisms are basically on chain. That allows us to bring millions of users into the application. We don't think billions is really necessary at this moment in time, but really allowing the users to own an asset with the lowest friction at a huge traffic pool is what brings us here.
Absolutely. I was doing a little bit of research into Sonic SVM, and I came across this concept of a sovereign game economy. Can you elaborate on that a little bit more, and how some of what you've already spoken to kind of plays into, really building that and representing the future for decentralized gaming?
Yeah. So we always talk about Sonic as a gaming ecosystem. And one of the reasons why we started network extension instead of just building on top of mainnet is that we think, gamers themselves actually care about the community, as well as kind of the lore of each one of these games, and even like the gaming ecosystem that it's hosted on. So when we're thinking about a sovereign economy that we're trying to build on top of Solana, we think that it needs to be serving a specific group of people that is really interested in Web3 gaming. And they are very different from the degens that might be trading meme coins, all day. Myself is one of them. But when I do play games, it requires a lot of understanding of the ecosystem, the lore, as well as kind of the whales within this economy as well. So that's why when we built out these products, the idea of sovereign economy came to us, where we care about three things fundamentally. The first one is what are the size of liquidity or size of economy that is reserved for gaming use cases or entertainment use cases on top of Sonic. And we can lock up those liquidity on top of Solana mainnet while having some of the gaming logic live on Sonic, so that from Solana's perspective, state and logic can be separated, and we can actually separate liquidity and logic, so we don't fragment that. And then the second point that we care about is something that we call monetary velocity. So for example, if you have a traditional MMORPG, money might flow through the ecosystem one time. So total supply of coins minted over the day might be consumed once. Let's say that's a total flow of the money supply. But when you put the economy as a on-chain economy, and there's a lot of trading activities, there's outside metagame of people trading these assets from a secondary marketplace, or the token is on a centralized exchange, all of this contributes to faster monetary velocity. And we've seen that number rise for some of the games that we work with to even higher numbers. The higher the speed of the velocity within the game, the more vibrant we think the economy is. And then the third aspect of the sovereign economy that we talk about is basically the ability to tap into mainnet, which is Solana's liquidity, having seen it grow significantly faster than the last cycle, and really coming to a point where the DEX volume is now top of the line across all ecosystems. That is something that is very, very beneficial to the game economies that sits on top of Solana, and hence on top of Sonic. So I think that those three aspects really contribute to the total size of the economy that we're trying to build. For example, on Solaire, which is a restaking protocol on top of Solana, we are the largest AVS with $85 million of Solana being delegated to Sonic. So Sonic, so right now is already a very widely adopted, LRT, LST at this point.
In terms of looking like the scope of, games that can, this can be applied to, as well as that maybe at some point can exist on Solana, are we talking about very large MMORPGs potentially, or AAA style games, or things that are a bit more simplistic in nature at the time being?
Yeah, for sure. That's a great question. So it really comes back to how we think about the gaming economy within Web3 as well. We think that there's a couple standards that you really need to hit for a Web3 game to be successful. The first one is actually surprisingly visual, because visual games actually attract the players at the first instant. Right. The second is actually simplicity of the core mechanism. The game itself can have a lot of content. You can play on and on and on and on. But the core mechanism has to be simple and easy to understand for the users. It's for two reasons. One is because when you play something in crypto, you are actually already making a mental decision on spending money or losing money or earning money. Right? And that is a heavier decision to be made than just playing something like 2048 or Candy Crush. That's more energy than required. That's why the gaming mechanism has to stay very, very simple for these players. And then the third point that we think about is actually the progression of our ecosystem. So let's say in the very early days, there's no monetary value within the main the network of Sonic or on testnet. Then we want something really hyper casual, really easy to play. Just have a couple of tries, get yourself involved in the ecosystem through playing these games. And then later on, we introduced dopamine inducing games like online casinos, prediction markets, where the DJs can really have something to play with and just bet on these events. And ultimately, we had to move to volume-based trading games, and then later on, heavier games like shooters, trading card games. So for us, it's a progression towards the ultimate goal, which is to have a complex in-game economy that is sovereign in its nature and have a lot of size. But before we can do that, we needed these individual components themselves to be there as well. And we accumulated, I think, upwards of 3 million active wallets, and daily active wallets right now is still sitting at anywhere between 500,000 to 1 million on a daily basis. And now that we have these base numbers, we can go and do something more aggressive or something more unique, so to speak.
How far off in a timeline do you think we are from actually seeing that for the first time, where we can have some of these, in-game assets tokenized and put on chain for very large scale games, like traditional AAA games, like Call of Duty or Halo, things that we're familiar with, very large titles. Because the blockchain ecosystem for gaming and Web3 is growing tremendously fast, which is awesome and exciting. But I think the big question for a lot of people is, when will we be able to apply these things to titles we're very familiar with?
Yeah. So from our perspective, I want to come back to the point that I mentioned before, which is we've been spending Q4 in Asia. And I think this topic is actually pretty prevalent in terms of the West against the East, or the West with the East. How does that really work? I think gaming is really unique in the sense that every single geographic area or market has its own unique of player behavior. And trader behavior as well. So if you look at something like Korea, the way that the traders in Korea and the retailers in Korea trade is significantly different from how someone on Coinbase trades. So that also contributes to the way that we think about games that are heavy, games that are the familiar AAA titles like Call of Duty or Fortnite, for example. Those are primarily more Western audience focused. If you think about what games the Eastern audience plays, there's a lot of MMORPG within Korea. There's a lot of Japanese action RPG in Japan. And in China, there's a lot of mobile games, free to play mobile games. So coming back to your question, we really think about which geographic area we are targeting through obviously the progression of the program as well. But we think that just because a game isn't AAA style doesn't mean it won't be hugely successful. And there was always a hierarchy when it comes to gaming devs in the early days of game development. The mobile game developers in the early days were the ones that didn't succeed in console or PC, but they were interested in a new distribution platform. So they went in and then captured that wave of mobile games. And then later on, throughout the 10 years of that journey, something like Genshin Impact took its place. But that took 10 years to really facilitate really high quality content. And similarly, in the early days of social gaming, you had something like Farmville, Zynga, on top of Facebook. And then later on, you had individual mobile games kind of taking its place, whether it be the Voodoos of the place or the Candy Crush of the space. So we think that crypto or Web3 games can actually take its form in many, many geographic areas, but it doesn't have to be AAA style. Although I think that Off the Grid is doing a fantastic job kind of bridging those two places and just focusing on one core mechanism, which is the trading of the skins. While some of the other games like Lumitera, which is on Ronin right now, and Low Life Forms, which is shooter on Sonic and Solana, focus a little bit on a different audience. So I think that there are successful cases already. It's just that it might not be the game that I personally enjoy playing on a daily basis, but there are tons of audience for those outside of our vicinity.
Yeah, that's a good perspective to highlight. I mean, different regions definitely are into different styles of gaming and different types of things. So that's actually a good to point out. Do you guys have any specific examples or use cases that you can highlight of, in-game economies that have been built around Sonic SVM?
Yeah. So full transparency, we are actually in testnet right now, reaching 3 million users at this moment in time. But we did entertain this idea of creating a TikTok-based mini app a couple months ago. So around February or March, we saw a couple videos on TikTok talking about Whiff. It just makes a lot of sense that it's such a cute, mimetic character. But it's also, one of the tokens that got into mass adoption or wider audience adoption at that moment in time. We thought that with simpler DEX design and on ramp, this could be combined into a very viral adoption curve for a lot of users. That's why we started growing our mini app on top of TikTok. I personally, work with the TikTok team previously, and our head of publishing worked for TikTok as well. And through that process, we were able to accumulate around 2 million verified users from TikTok's single sign-on login. We created wallets for them. We mapped the user ID with our with their public address, and then we basically allowed them to enter the game scene, have a iframe of all of the games that we publish into the TikTok app, and then the users can claim rewards that way. So it's not a very complex economy, but it's introducing additional liquidity from outside ecosystems into the Sonic VM.
Okay, interesting. And then when do you think you guys will hit mainnet? Do you have that scheduled on your roadmap?
Yeah, so internally, we are shipping mainnets as of now, and there's going to be a couple stages to our permission mainnet and then developer adoption, and then later on, kind of opening it up to the wider public. We're looking at somewhere between Q1 2025, but we would have a bigger announcement near end of year this year already.
Okay, cool. And then if you're a developer out there and you want to start building and you want to use Sonic SVM, is there documentation, specific tools, community resources that can kind of help them along that path?
Yeah, for sure. So there's three core parts of Sonic SVM that actually would help the developers. The overarching kind of scaling solution that we propose so that Sonic itself is possible is called HyperGrid. HyperGrid is similar to a roll-up structure where we synchronize all of the shared state changes across Sonic back to Solana Mainnet. And how that is done is through utilizing the POH consensus, where we take the sequential events and we basically just store the state root hashes and store in a concurrent local tree. And that's the first part. So understanding HyperGrid greatly helps you, understand the SVM itself. We are also working on a V2, which is going to be focusing more on execution and lighter on consensus and gossip, which makes it faster and lighter. The third kind of product that you would need to understand as a developer, but super, super simple, is something called Rush. So for a lot of gaming developers, it was really difficult for them to understand PDA, understand the account structures, the REM structures for Solana's programming. Solana's programming model. And Rush basically is a declarative entity component and system framework that allows the devs to just abstract that away and set up its worlds, its entities, and its systems. And you can actually utilize those templates and compose them so that other devs don't have to build them one more time. But the most important part is that it abstracts away a lot of the initialization of these accounts on top of Solana that might be very difficult to get into.
And then, looking a bit further at your guys' roadmap, mainnet aside and everything going into 2025, what are some things that maybe you guys are excited about, some new things that maybe you guys will be releasing or that'll be important for users and developers to be aware of? Are you guys attending any events as well? What does the scope kind of look like for next year?
Yeah, so Sonic was born February or March this year, and we were lucky to be able to receive a lot of support within the ecosystems over the past 6 months or so by really focusing on the users, which is what we're good at, is the distribution, acquisition of users, and Bitcraft, Galaxy, and some of those guys backed our last round, and that's only been less than half a year. So we think we're still very young in terms of our development, but we do foresee ourselves going from testnet to mainnet very, very soon. That being said, there's a couple large milestones on our roadmap. One is obviously V2 of Sonic, which will be faster on execution. We're working with the Anza team to really make it lighter on a lot of the fluff around the SVM. And then the second part is going to be our mainnet rollout, where we aim to have multiple games deployed on our mainnet so that the sovereign economy is vibrant. So far, 85 million on Solier. We're aiming to have that up to 100 very, very soon. And then the third point that I would like to make is around our token generation event, which possibly will happen in the next couple of months as well. So those three milestones kind of complete our product adoption, our ecosystem growth, as well as our economy.
This might be an impossible question, but I want to ask it anyways. Is there a game or any Web3 games in particular that you're most excited about or that you like, whether it's on Solana, off Solana, or going to be in the ecosystem, that are most intriguing to you? I know you mentioned Star Atlas earlier. We've actually interviewed them quite a while back. They were very fantastic and interesting. But what stands out to you as an interesting Web3 game or something really cool?
Yeah, so obviously I'm biased when I talk about these games that we're in conversations with or bringing to our ecosystem, but there are some stars within our ecosystem that are doing, I would say, like very different work. So there's a team called Mahjong Verse, which focuses on utilizing the Mahjong IP and bring all kinds of different mechanisms around that product. So they have Mahjong 123, which is solitaire, targeted for the Western audience, because there's a lot of Mahjong solitaire, and you can basically complete quests, a lot of tasks, and then social PvP as well. And then there's the Mahjong main game, which is a more strategic battle type of Mahjong game, very skill based, but harder to get into. And then there's very cute IPs around that as well. So they created a series of these mini games that really utilizes the core of Mahjong IP, and then having a singular economy where you can basically take one part of that and then transfer it to the next game, and then utilize the same token across multiple games as well. We also work with a couple more DeFi-oriented teams on top of Solana. One particular name called Windfall. They basically take the LRT and LST yield that you can generate off of staking your Solana and put that into a casino mechanism where, if you imagine traditional casinos where the house has anywhere between 3 to even 30% sometimes of edge, and now you have something like Windfall, which uses the native yield for those types of edges. You can imagine a casino where it seems like nobody is losing money. And we think that notion is super, super interesting, where can you have a equal casino where everyone has chips and no one has an edge. And really, like, the house is not taking a share from this, just based on the existing staked weight. And the last one I would mention is Lumiterra, which is one of our favorite games that we have the pleasure of working with for a little bit. They're also doing their tests on top of Ronin. Great team, really rolling out some of the DeFi and crafting mechanisms, the best we've seen in any game. So hopefully we'll bring all of those to mainnet very, very soon on top of Sonic SVM.
And then how can people find Sonic SVM outside the website? Are you guys on socials? Do you have community at all? Where can people go find you guys?
Yeah, so obviously we're on TikTok. Been doing a lot of advertisement on top of TikTok, and a lot of creators helping us grow those channels as well. But Twitter or X is going to be where we are the most vocal. A lot of new updates on top of X at all times as well. You can follow us at Sonic SVM. That's our X handle. I think community-wise, we're currently at almost 500K followers, and that's one of the milestones that we want to celebrate. So very excited to share more with all of you guys.
Chris, thank you for taking the time, man, coming on the show and talking about Sonic SVM. I think you guys are doing some awesome stuff, and thank you for really helping build solid foundation and infrastructure around the Web3 gaming space, and keep it up, man. Excited to see what you guys do next year.
Appreciate it, and you guys have interviewed some of the best in the game, so hopefully we can see them coming back to the pod after a while as well. The market has been so different that I'm looking forward personally to what they have to say as well.
Yeah, I think we will pretty soon, so we'll keep you posted. But in the meantime, take care, and we'll talk soon.